evening and welcome to the Writer's Block. I'm your host, John Ronan, and as you know now, in our 36th year of production, I interview writers about their craft, what they're working on, what they've accomplished in the past, what they might be planning for the future. It is a little bit wider net than that, however. We have had on other brands of artists. We've had on musicians, actors, sculptors. If you have an idea for an artist of any sort who might be a good fit for the Writer's Block, watch for our address at the end of the program. We would love to get your suggestions. I also want to remind you, as I have many, many times before, that the Writer's Block and all the other original programming that comes out of 1623 Studios is a result of cable access television. It is a wonderful community asset. You don't get that with other means of accessing the internet. So stick with the Writer's Block, stick with cable. Now, I'm happy to say we do have, as usual, a writer this evening. She is a poet by the name of Ann Babson Carter, known to her friends as Jill, and she has written a wonderful, witty poem. Not poems, this book is not poems, it's a poem, a long poem. Why Gertrude Stein and I bought the pink house together. Ann Babson Carter. Jill,
yes.
Welcome to the Writer's Block.
Welcome
back to the Writer's Block.
Thank you.
Maybe,
I love coming to see you.
I mentioned I wanted to ask for a first question. How did you get the nickname Jill?
When I was born, I had a twin brother, he and I. So we were named after our parents, Anne and Warren, and it would have been very confusing. So someone said, call them Jack and Jill. So they did, and it stuck. That was our name.
So he was Jack.
And so I think of Jack right now. Unfortunately, he passed away this past May, so I'm thinking about him a lot today.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. Yep. So
that's a good story. I forgot to mention that this is not your first publication. You are widely published, and you won the very prestigious Four Ways Prize, and you've been published in The Nation, Paris Review, Humanities, many places. And information on you is on my website under the Writer's Block page, and also I think at the Babson Institute. Is that right?
Babson College? You're talking about Babson College?
No, there's an institute or a foundation of Babson.
Where?
I don't know. I looked it up, and there was an article about you, and the citation was Babson Foundation or the Babson Institute.
Well, we have lots of family trees and genealogies in our family. I bet it's from one of the genealogists.
Well, okay. Now, general background, in case our fans and audience don't remember the last visit. Where were you born and raised, and where did you go to school, and how did you find your way back to Annisquam?
So Jack and I were born together, of course, and we lived down in Gloucester, and it was 1939, and my father was a busy doctor in town, so we lived on the corner of Pleasant and Prospect, and we had a great childhood growing up, and the whole of Gloucester was our playground. I could remember.
Pleasant and Prospect, just a couple blocks from here.
I know this so well. And we used to ride our bikes down Centennial Avenue with no hands. I mean, I think of the things we did. So we lived here in Gloucester, and then we moved to Annisquam because my mother wanted to get away from the busy traffic because she had 4 children. So I have 2 other brothers, David Babson and Tom Babson. David is deceased now too, as Jack. So I grew up the rest of the time in Annisquam, and I went to the Gloucester Public Schools. I went to Central Grammar and the high school. It's a great high school. And then I went off to a college in Virginia, Sweetbriar. And I got down there.
Poor Sweetbriar.
Yeah, huh? I know. So we got there. I got there because my mother's from Virginia. And she really wanted me to go south at some point. So that's what I did. And then I got married right out of college, because in those days you did, and had a baby within a year. So I switched off very quickly to being a wife and a mother. And had a wonderful husband, Martin. And unfortunately, he died in 1993 when he was 57 and I was 53. So I stayed on. We were living in New York City, which is why that was the source of this book, was living in New York City. When we moved there, and I started going to museums, and I loved the attributions, particularly when they quoted the poets. It was to me it was hilarious.
You mean in the wall text?
Yes.
Or?
And so I would copy down these quotes of the artists, and I had a folder at home, and I just stuck those fragments in that folder. And it went on and on and on. I also always loved color. So in that folder there's a pigment chart with I wrote a poem in The Nation about how flowers and colors, there are a lot that are the name, a flower is a color. For instance, marigold. So I always loved color. And along the way I started reading Gertrude Stein. She's an experience. She will always be immortal because she was I think she was a genius, because she is unique in every way. And you know what happened, John? I'm skipping around.
That's okay.
But Gertrude,
That's okay.
who was an American, she and her brother, she went to Johns Hopkins Medical School for a year and didn't like it and left. So she and her brother Leo went to Paris in, I think, 1929. And she was born in 1897, I think. Anyway, and she and Leo began immediately amassing this incredible art collection. The modern art was just coming out of the Victorian period. There were the Imagists, Ezra Pound and E.E. Cummings, and there was this whole period now that it was in flux. And so same thing happened to art suddenly. And that's what I have in my book, because, all right, I'll keep. So Gertrude Stein.
Her dates are approximately late 1890s to 60s.
No, she died a year after the war ended. And she and her partner.
What year did she die?
She was born in 1896. She died as 1949.
Oh, I didn't know. I forgot it was that early.
She and her partner, Alice B. Toklas, were one of the first publicized lesbian writers and poets worldwide. And so, they were in Paris when Paris was taken by the Germans. And so they moved out of Paris. And fortunately, she had a friend who was a turncoat and collaborated with the Germans. He was a French art dealer. But he saved her art collection for her while she was down there. He didn't let the Germans destroy it. So.
Was she going to England?
No, she was in south of France. She was. I think I'm making this very complicated.
So you fell in love with Gertrude Stein's work.
Yes.
And she became the inspiration for this book.
Well, part of it. So I was trying to tell you that it's
yes.
Paris in the 20s. I've always loved that with Hemingway. And then Gertrude Stein in her salon, her brother said it was a salon of propaganda because she considered herself a genius, and she sat there and she orated in her salon every afternoon. And all of the expats, Hemingway and Dos Passos and Sherwood Anderson, they all came to sit at her knee and listen to her. Plus Picasso, Cezanne.
She was famous or possibly notorious for self-acclaim. Do you agree that she was a genius?
In her way, she was. She thought that she was one of three geniuses living. One was Picasso, of whom she wrote a book, and the other was Alfred North Whitehead, who's a philosopher, and Gertrude Stein. And because she was, talk about taking things to the extreme, she never thought in halfway thoughts at all. Everything was always superlative and hyperbole about her. And she wrote all these books, but no one ever read them because they didn't make sense. If you open, there's a book called Tender Buttons. If you open it up and you start reading a collage of words don't mean anything, and then you see a whole page of numbers, are you going to read it? No. So everybody kind of laughed at her, but it didn't make her go away. And eventually she even toured in America with her books. And probably it was because she knew the greats and she had started this art collection. So anyway, I collected all this, and then I moved, after my husband died, I moved back home to Annisquam, and I had just bought the Pink House in Annisquam, which was an iconic structure on Cape Ann.
When did you buy that, Jill?
In 1999. So the Pink House was owned by Bertha and Charles Heberly. The Heberly family still owns the buildings there. And they moved in 1949. And Bertha wanted to stain her clapboards a certain color. So they simply called up Cabot and said, we'd like to come and mix up our stain. So of course they did. They went, and she mixed up what she knew she wanted, and it was a stain. It's called Bertha Heberly's Pink Stain. It's still on the lists at Cabot. It's never been used for another house.
I want to stress for our audience that this is not a poetic term. This is a real pink house.
Yes, it is. That's a literal part of the book, is the Pink House did exist as it was. I sold it in 2018, and then the lovely person who bought it, it needed some renovations. She thought it did need closets. It had no closets or bathrooms really.
Yeah.
Because it originally was from 1636, and the structure had been built on.
So when did you sold the house, and then you repurchased?
And I sold it before I moved away to New Hampshire, Hanover, and then I came back 4 years later because I had been up there during COVID, and I had built a house on the Connecticut River, and it was lovely. But, and I'd gone up there, I had a daughter up there, and they decided to move to Charlottesville. And I walked back into my house and I thought, this is beautiful, but it's not a home. I'm going home. And people said to me, do you know how lucky you are? You have a home to go home to? And here I was, 81. I said, sure. So I moved back. And I didn't have the Pink House anymore. And it's now very elegant. It's a shell pink with graphite trim and doors. So it's a totally different house. Also, the chestnut tree that's in the book it had to be taken down because it was hollow inside. So the house, it used to look like a little French dollhouse. That's exactly what people used to say about it. And it looks different now.
So then you did not rebuy it?
No. And so now I'm living in a condo, and I'm really lucky to live in a condo. You know, keeping a wooden house going, maintained on Cape Ann is a real trick for everyone. All of us who own wooden houses, you know, the sea and the salt just,
Yeah.
you know, everything evaporates.
When did you conceive this book, this poem?
So the reason why, and I had this great folder, but I didn't know what to do with it. And then I bought the pink house. And I thought, that's it. That's my connection. The pink house. So that's when I sat down and I started imagining that all of what comes up, and you have to understand, if you decide you want to read the book, it doesn't make any sense. It's intended deception. It only makes sense, it's called faulty reasoning, because you read the words and you read the words and you think everything makes sense, but then you realize it doesn't.
But this does make sense.
Well, eventually, if you let your mind go, if you're literal.
Ugh. Well, this is concrete. If you take your relationship with Gertrude Stein and the purchase, it's spiritual purchase.
I guess you're right, John. Yeah, must be. So I had an absolutely wonderful time writing that poem. I'm a very slow writer, and I think I spent 2 years writing it. And it was long. It was 6 pages long, which it was reduced. So I sent it to my friend, mentor in New York City, and he wrote back and said, and in New York I was known as Anne. I never went over to Jill in the writing world, and I was thick into the writing world in New York. So he said, this is lovely, but it needs to be an artist's book. You need to find an illustrator. So I put it in the back of my filing drawer, and then about two to 3 years ago, the wonderful artist who did these beautiful watercolors all the way through is my granddaughter, Cece Rooney. And she's a graphic designer, and she knew how to do it, but she'd never done it. So she and I worked together to design the book. Marion Hall said to me, Jill, we were docents together in the museum, and she said, Jill, I've always loved your poetry. Let's do a book together, and I'll illustrate it. And I thought, bingo, I know what I want. So I said, Marion. She took it home, and she liked it. She didn't know who Gertrude Stein was. She didn't know who the Fauves were, but she loved the spirit of it. So she, within a week, sent me 12 watercolors, and she chose from the book what she wanted to illustrate. And they were beautiful.
So this is very much a team effort.
Oh, yes. And so she did that, and then Cece and I had to decide what I wanted, actually. I knew I wanted a square book. I've always loved square books. And I went to Cape Ann Museum, and guess what? Virginia Lee Demetrius, you know, she's the Folly Cove designer lady, George Demetrius' wife, widow, whatever. All of her books, which Mike Mulligan and his steam shovel, and The Little House, and the best one is it's about a little horse named Stinky. Anyway.
So I want to emphasize that because there's a paragraph in the back on the author, yourself, and there's a paragraph in the back about Mary Hall.
Marion Hall.
And then a paragraph in Cece's voice, explains who she is. Cece Rooney,
Rooney.
who is your granddaughter, and I think still based in Charlottesville.
Yes, right. So she and I worked, and I had to decide. I went to I went to the museum and I looked at all of Virginia Lee Demetrius's books, and so I imitated her style of the slant, the verse, the text. You know, I had to decide which words, stanzas. You don't know these as stanzas, but they were, and we broke them up. And then she told Cece, just take. She didn't give her enough for every page. And she said, what you do is you take the big one and you cut it up and use single images out of those large ones to get yourself through the book. And she knew all about repetition, and she decided there should be a wash across the top like this. This was wonderful. Look at that. That's the Eiffel Tower. And let me see if I can show you what the full thing was. Do it. My hands were horrible. No, anyway.
Well, I want to read something that I think is an example of a stanza, a very witty stanza that might have been separated originally, and it's an example of the tone and the cleverness of the whole poem. Of course, they all come to Paris, a great many of them to paint pictures. Paris is where the 20th century is. That's Stein speaking.
Yeah.
And then the narrator speaking. Did the immortal Stein visit Annisquam? How else could she have known that we, growing up on Cape Ann, we knew the whereabouts of the 20th century?
Yeah.
Gloucester's the center of the universe.
Yes,
Everybody
we know
knows
that
Yeah.
wonderful graphic cartoon.
Yes.
So it took about a year for us to do that, to put it together. And then I knew this was my, swan song as far as anything like this. So I said, come on, Cece, let's go for it. So I didn't want to have it done online. I wanted to have more control than that. So she found a wonderful press in Los Angeles called Nonstop Press.
Los Angeles.
And it went out there. It's a very small press. And they loved it. And the owner said, okay, it's mine. I'm going to take this one. And this is watercolor paper, John. Actual watercolor paper. Can you imagine what that does to the price? I've never told anyone how much I paid.
This I don't know what thickness or what designation this would be. This would be 60-pound paper or 80-pound paper.
Any artist who's looked at it has told me it really is.
Very thick.
And then I had something on the back. I had the spine. It has an ISBN number. And the best of all, look at this. It has pink end papers. You can see that. Well, it was phenomenal what it was going to cost. So he was great, that owner of the press. He said to Cece, we really love this book. So you tell your grandmother, if she's willing, if she doesn't have a deadline for this book, we always need work to do when it's a slow time for our printers. So if you will, if she will agree, I only had a run of 300 books, which of course for them, he said if she will take 150 now and let us work out the other 150, I'll cut the price in half. Oh, and the other thing the original one was in hardcover, and the hardcover one puts it over the line. So we did change that. And he said, if you do that, you won't have to change anything inside. Because Cece said to me, Tree, you'll have to that's my grandmother named Tree. Tree, you'll have to get rid of the end papers. I said, no, I can't do that. UOPL has this nice paper. No, we can't do that.
Did you go to L.A.?
No,
To talk
this
to-
is Cece, all online.
It's all online.
Yeah, she's a miracle.
You and your crew and the printer did an excellent job. This is a very impressive book.
It is. And Marion Hall, she's a fabulous artist. Watercolorist, lives in Manchester, she's paints every day of her life. She enters all these different exhibitions. She sells like crazy. And they're all watercolors, and most of them are all about Cape Ann. And she's married her husband, Steve. He's retired now, but he was, John, get this, he was the man at Harvard University who was in charge of choosing the computers that entire university, the entire university would choose them for their different departments that they would need. It would do what they want. And he had that responsibility. So you could bet he knows everything.
He knows about IT, huh?
Yeah. So anyway, Steve heard us talking, and the one thing I can't do very well is put myself forward. I've never had to do that. And Marion's great at that. She's done.
Finish that sentence. I'm sorry.
She's terrific at that. She can.
I was just gonna, yeah.
She will, every time she exhibits, she takes some of her children's books, and this one, and she hands them out. She keeps them in her back seat of her car, and this one is $20. Steve thought it should.
And it's at the bookstore in Gloucester too.
I think it's 25 at the bookstore.
I bought it at the bookstore for 20.
Oh, they changed it. Good.
We're almost out of time.
Oh no.
It goes fast. I enjoyed this very much.
I'm sure everybody's so confused by this time.
I hope that our audience enjoyed it. I know our audience enjoyed it as much. I want to thank you for coming back, Ann, Babson, Carter, Jill, for talking about why Gertrude Stein and I bought the Pink House together. It's a delightful, witty book. I have to recommend it to everybody.
Oh,
Thanks for coming down.
Thank you for inviting me, John.
I want to thank all of you in television land, too, for being with us on the Writer's Block this evening. If you've learned about Ann Babson Carter, nicknamed Jill, who lives in Gloucester and has written this wonderful, witty book about a pink house, then the Writer's Block has done its job. Thanks for being with us, and I hope to see you again next time on the Writer's Block. Good night.